stupid bitch. Yeah, you're a stupid bitch, you stupid bitch.
Well, hello, you stupid bitch. Good
Look,
evening.
good evening. Look, he's back. Back
He's
again.
back. Episode 2.
Of season 10.
Season 10.
It's actually episode 110.
Oh, wow. Oh, my
I
gosh.
know. Fresh out of our true crime recording and straight into a pop culture.
Double episode. Trying to not drink too much.
Well, I'm not doing too bad. Probably including what's in my glass about halfway through the first bottle.
Yeah, look, this is what's left over.
Oh, yeah. You're
I
doing
did
well.
okay.
Is that a rosé Tempest too?
No, it's an NV.
Oh, yeah.
But this isn't what I'm drinking, by the way. This is what I was drinking last episode.
I'm drinking the same.
Oh, you dumb bitch. You can't.
I can.
You're the
Do you
worst.
call me a cunt or that I can't?
No,
you can't.
No, I don't say the C word.
What is it, you cunt face? Do you know that from Sound of Music? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
That's what the nun says to Maria. She's like saying something she can't do, something. She's like, what is it, you cunt face? It's a big thing.
She's obviously not saying that because she's a nun.
She's saying, what is it you can't face? But with her accent, she's like, what is it you can't face?
Of course your mind would go there.
It's a big meme thing.
I get that. It's a joke. It's a joke, Joyce.
Don't call me Joyce. It's Jocelyn.
Anywho, you made me lose my train of thought. And I didn't really have a very strong train to begin with because I have to do the intro. And you know I'm terrible at the intro.
Yeah, you're amazing.
So welcome listeners to episode 2, season 10. We're back at it. And you're listening to Stupid Bitches Say What, the podcast about everything and nothing, but always with cha-ching.
What?
Some Verno plus some little Verno.
Yeah.
With your hosts, Sean Bino, Stupid Bitch Hipkins.
And Sky Lee, Stupid Bitch Colette. Chaz.
Colette.
Colette. Oh, yeah, I always say Colette.
You do all the time, no matter how many times I correct you, and no matter how many years we've known each other or how many countries we've traveled to together, you still get my surname wrong. Imagine if I got your surname wrong.
How would you pronounce it? How could you say Hipkins wrong?
Hopkins.
Hopkins, I like that.
No, Hopkins.
Hookta.
But let's answer the question that everybody is waiting to hear. Pray tell, what are you drinking, Sean, you stupid bitch?
I am still drinking my Penfold Coonunga Hill Cab Sav 2023. And what are you drinking, Scott? It looks very similar, but is there soda water in that, or?
I'm also still drinking my Prosecco, but I am introducing a different bottle in once I finish this glass of Prosecco. And I've drunk it before on the podcast. It's my favorite wine in the world. This is bottle 1 of 3 that my son got me for Christmas because he knows what his mother loves.
Bless him.
Yeah, so I'll be drinking Muddy, and it's a Savvy B Marlborough 2023, which is also 2 years old, you stupid bitch.
Oh, happy birthday. I do have a bottle of white in the fridge that I 2 years.
That was weird.
I do have a bottle of white in the fridge that I was planning on drinking, and I opened it to make a risotto the other night, but it's a Chardonnay.
Oh.
So I was like,
it's only good for putting in food.
Yeah, exactly. I've only used a little bit. Risotto. I'll keep it in there. It's Chardonnay, you shan't.
Anywho, how's your week been?
Week's been good. Now, this is something exciting for me anyway. I've
got shivers.
For the very first time in my life, besides the Australian versions of this show, I watched a Real Housewives of, and I've started with episode 1, season 1 of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
Stop it. Well,
Never
you've just
watched
given
it.
me a new show to watch then because I love The Real Housewives.
It.
Um, and I have wanted to restart, but I didn't know where to start.
I've never seen any of it, and I'm like, with all of it, and there's 14 seasons. I'm like, I've still got to go from the beginning, and fucking hooked. So we started it last Sunday, and when I say we are fucking hooked, I mean we, as in Vinny and I, even though he will deny it. But we binged about 5 episodes in a row on Sunday, and he was like, it is fucking unbelievable. He was wetting himself laughing. The whole what do you call it, the comprehension or the levels of comprehension between them and us and the stuff they're doing. Like there's one, I can't remember her name. She's a billionaire. Her family own fucking Palm Casino or some shit in Las Vegas. And she's very cool. And she's the one she's married to a plastic surgeon, but she's obviously the money.
Oh, the short one that's sort of
Yes.
olivey skin. I know.
Blonde.
Yes, I know the one you're talking
Yes.
about.
And she's cool.
And the plastic surgeon sort of got like a curly black hair.
Yeah,
He's also a
it's
short
shorter.
man.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And one of the friends says something about, I can't remember what her name is. Oh, she's very, down to earth and rah rah. And Vinny's like, what the fuck? And she's very unassuming or doesn't really promote herself what. And Vinny's like, are you fucking serious?
Just
Like, what
wait.
the fuck? Oh, I'm fucking we're obsessed with it. So we watched 5 episodes. Kim is a fucking hot mess, bless her.
Oh, she's a
From the
trash bag. She's an
absolute
absolute
guess at
trash
get
bag.
go. She just looks rattled the entire time. But did you know? So Vinny, when we started watching it, Vinny then started Wikipediaing every one of them. You
I
know they're
know what
not
you're gonna
together
say.
anymore. You know they're not together anymore. You know they're
Yeah,
not together
none of them
anymore.
are. They always break up.
And he goes, but she, her one of her husbands, she was on the phone to him while he got shot. He was like, well, I think he was in the, I don't know if it's in the mob or the mafia or something like that. And he was walking home and he was on the phone to her and she heard him getting shot and murdered on the phone.
Oh, I know. I didn't know that. I thought you were going to say that that's Paris Hilton's
Oh
aunts.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. All of that thing because she says that in the first episode, and it's quite.
They drop it all the time,
Oh,
don't
where
they?
she goes,
Paris this and Paris
she's
that
like,
and Paris
and so
this.
I'm Paris's aunt, and like we went to a restaurant together, and Paris wanted to make something of herself, and she did. But we were in the restaurant together, and then we came out, and they're like, "Oh Kim, hey Paris, oh Kim, hey Paris," and Paris is like, "Huh? What do you mean they're looking at you?" And I'm like, ah, "Girl, I was the it girl before you, and rah rah rah, and all this." And I'm like, "Step aside, they want me," and all. I'm like, "Oh girl." She was in
You
Return to
just
Witch Mountain.
wait.
Do you know that? She was
Yeah, I did know that. I did know
as a
that.
little girl, and then she was in Chips and shit like that. And she's like, yeah, so I was it before Kate Paris, she's like, and she's just like, oh my god, and
She just spirals, mate. She goes down.
oh, she's already like looks halfway there in the fucking first episode. I was just like, oh, you poor thing, you just look absolutely fucking shook. I love Kyle so far in
Yeah.
it, and I love Camille. Camille is.
Casey Grammer's
Oh
wife.
no, I love Kyle. I hate Camille.
Yeah.
Kelsey Sack, she is a dumb fucking
And she
bitch.
had both of her children via surrogate because she didn't want to
Yes,
lose her
lose her
figure.
body. And she's saying, like, I'm the brains behind this thing with Kelsey and this production company. She is so far up her own fucking ass. It's
He ditches
sickening.
her for a younger woman very soon.
Yes, Vinny filled me in on all of the
Yeah.
goings on of the future. It's cool seeing Lisa Vanderpump and her husband with their pooches and thinking how we
Mm-hmm.
met them that time in LA
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
at dinner next to them. So
So you know
thoroughly
who
enjoying
comes
it.
into it? So Kathy Hilton comes into it in a few seasons.
Yes,
I think it's about 6 or 7. She comes in, she becomes a regular. And also the chick comes into it, Brandy, and she's the one who's the country singer, the OG one with the blonde hair years ago, and she made
Faith
it.
Hill. No.
No, no. I want to say Lisa.
Leanne
No.
Rhymes.
Yes,
No.
Leanne
Oh
Rhymes.
yeah.
So Leanne Rhymes, he ditched Brandy for Leanne Rhymes, and now they're famously together. And they cheated, and
Oh,
then
okay.
Brandy had a couple of kids, and she's a hot mess. She is like chugging the wines like
I'm
nobody's
telling you,
business, talking shit about the ex-husband like constantly.
when the producers interviewed Kim for this show, they were like, "Yes, money, money, cash,
Yes,
cash, money, money." She
yes.
is oh, bless her, the poor thing. But
What
yeah,
about the
no.
meme that you sent me? I mean, the video, the SNL one, where they're like the housewives
Oh
of
yeah, the
Saturday
real
Night Live, and they're
for
all
the
like,
50th anniversary.
that was the
We are
best.
family. We are family around here.
She pulled my weave.
Yeah, I did not pull your weave.
And then she comes back on and she's like, "Can I just ask you a question? Why did you choke my dog?
Yeah. Maya Rudolph, I
I did
love
not
her.
choke your dog.
And
You
she, look at her,
choked
she's pulling
my
a wig.
dog.
And when she walks off, and she just sort of does his tiny footsteps walking off. I'm back because I was bored out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, how about you, Sugar Bitch? How was your week been?
So there's something really interesting that I thought you would like to know. But you know how much I love Gladys Berejiklian? Is that how you say it? Berejiklian? How do you say
Who
her
is
surname?
it?
The former New South Wales Premier, the Liberal Premier.
Yeah, Pajelka. Yeah.
Yeah, Gladys. Anyway, we know her as
Gladys.
Gladys.
Yeah.
Oh, Gladdy. She's made a rare political appearance, and there's talk of her being back in politics, even though she's one of the senior managers for Optus right now. Ick.
Is she going to be an
Um,
independent or?
no, well, she was there supporting tech executive Giselle Capitarian. They were at like a support sort of drinks function,
Yeah.
and this Giselle is in
Campaign
her
launch or?
pre-selection battle against high-profile anti-voice campaigner Warren Mundine. So she's
Oh.
going against him for the seat of Bradfield at this year's federal election. She was there with a whole bunch of people, Joe Hockey, some other people that I don't really know. But what you'd like to know is that she was there for drinks. And there's
Oh, I
this
like
photo of
drinks.
her, and it's just her swiveling her head. So you can tell it's her because you can see her face, but she's got her back to the photo. And there's this dude stood next to her with this huge glass that's full of red. So you can't see her arms. You just see her head swivel like this. And I'm like, because we used to joke so much about how she'd love a good red, but she used to have to
Yeah.
get up at fucking 7 every morning to do the
Yes.
update
Yeah,
for
yeah,
COVID.
yeah.
And we were like, mate, that bitch needs a red one like nobody's business.
We did
Um,
used to say that.
and
That
I bet
was
$100 she had a big chonker in front of her too, and that's why
as
she
well.
didn't turn her body. She was like, I can't show them how much red
She had to
wine I
use two
drink.
hands to hold it.
Yeah.
Oh, good on her.
Nice to see you,
Thirsty
Gladys. I've
bitch.
missed
Thirsty
you.
bitch.
Love her. So the other thing I want to talk about is that I don't know if you remember last year, but I brought myself a little book box. They're those subscriptions that you get where they tailor a book for you. You attach your good reads to it so that they
Yeah.
know what you've
Oh,
already read, and
yes.
then they pick a selection based on a questionnaire that you do. And in it, you get some book merchandise. There's usually a candle and a bath bomb. There's
Yes,
a
yes,
whole bunch of
yes.
snacks.
How much
So
was it? A month?
I think it was about $95 for the time that I got it last year. But one of
Jesus.
my Christmas presents from my beautiful husband was a 3-month subscription.
Oh, wow.
So I've got three, but I had the first one come maybe a week and a half ago. And it's very exciting because I love getting
Mm.
books in the mail.
And
And I
especially when
love
it's a
getting,
surprise too.
yes, and it's all books, book like
$100
merch
is a
and
bit,
things like that.
isn't it, for a book?
Well, I mean, generally your books are going to cost between 15 and $20, sometimes a little bit cheaper depending on what you're reading and how long it's been out for. And then you get a whole bunch of other stuff. And it's quite generous, but yes, obviously they've got to make money somewhere.
Of
So
course.
probably the box in itself is
And
maybe worth
postage.
$60. They're making a good chunk, but there's nothing like opening a box of things that
Yeah.
you don't know what's in it and you're like, "Oh my
It's like a birthday
god."
present every month. Yeah.
And then the snacks that they put in, so there was like this massive giant choc chip cookie, a packet of fancy potato chips, and then there's like a packet, those boodles. Have you seen those at the shops? They're all
No.
the rage in the chocolate aisle. They're supposed to be lower in sugar. They're like sort of rice crisps, but they're wrapped in chocolate. They're
Oh,
delicious.
okay.
They're certainly not as low in fat as what they advertise, because when you look at the calories, like, fuck, I can have three.
Yeah. Three a serving, and that's 150 calories.
And then you get stickers and a whole bunch of other stuff. So it's very, very lovely. So that's
That's cool.
I know I'm very excited for my next one. And I just thought I'd really quickly talk about some books that I've been reading.
Yeah.
So can you guess how many books I've read this year already on the 17th day
6.
of this month? Well, you'd be pretty close. I've finished 5 and I'm on my 6th.
Oh, wow. Well done.
Yes. So I thought I'm only really going to try to talk about 5-star books this year because I do ramble on a little bit about my books. But I read this book, which isn't normally my thing. I don't mind the romances sometimes, but I'm more of a thriller person, or
Yeah.
it's something a little bit more shocking. But I picked up from the library this book called Attachments, and it's by this chick called Rainbow Rao. And she's huge. She's quite famous. She's got a few books out. I think even one of her books have become a movie. And the book was overdue, and I nearly returned it to the library without reading it. But I thought it wasn't a super thick book, and I thought I'm just going to try to race through it because I hate returning a book to the library that I haven't read.
Yeah. Especially if you started it.
Well, no, I hadn't started. It was on my list, so I quickly
Okay.
speed read it on the weekend. But it was excellent. So the premise is this guy gets this job at this company, and it's in like maybe 2002 or something like that, just when the internet was no, sorry, it was 99 because it was just before the Y2K.
Ah,
So he
yes.
gets hired because this, New York newspaper, this small New York newspaper, has finally gotten computers. They're freaked out about Y2K coming, and they had taken forever to finally go digital. But they're worried that all their staff are, using the internet and using email for personal use. So they hire this one guy to come in
Which we
with,
all did back
yeah,
then.
100%. It was like, yes, I spent probably half a workday just emailing you.
Yeah.
Um,
Just quickly, I remember when you were talking about the Y2K thing, I remember in the 90s when I was using the internet to download all the Vegas hotels and printing them out on the office paper and taking home bundles of shit so I could read about these Vegas hotels
you
because we didn't
definitely
have
took the
internet at
piss.
home.
Anyway, so his job, he gets hired to just purely read emails that get alerted as personal emails. So he works nights, and he just sits there in his office, and he's gone through this heartbreak, and he's sort of like in a really shitty place in his life anyway. So he's just reading these emails all night. And there's these two girls who just email personal emails all the time. And for about 6 months, he just becomes obsessed with them. Like he doesn't mean to, that's his actual job. Like he has to read them, then he has to send them warnings.
Imagine the sort of details he would have read in real life if that was your job.
So he's like reading all these emails, and before he knows what he's doing, he's become obsessed. Like he's totally caught up in their lives, and he's just like can't wait for the next email to come out. And then he
Yeah,
falls in
yeah,
love with
yeah.
the girl, one of the girls, based on it. And he doesn't see her, like he doesn't even see what she looks like for like the
It's just
first.
complete voyeuristic sort of, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and then he's like, when he actually meets her and he's still working there, he's like, I can never tell her. Like, I can't tell her. I know everything about her life. Like, this is creepy as fuck. There's
Yeah.
no coming back from this. And he tells his best friend, she's like, dude, there's no coming back, man.
Yeah,
There's no
yeah.
coming back. Like, you
And imagine
can't.
if you accidentally dropped some sort of fact that you read in a conversation like, oh, but you hate roses. Oh, shit.
But also, he's just such this lovely character that he could never lie to anyone anyway. Like he just wouldn't be able to pull it off, and he's just too genuine. So in the end, he just resigns himself to the fact that nothing's ever going to happen. And then he just and she actually has seen him around the office because sometimes she works night. She's like a movie reviewer. um, and sometimes she comes into the office, and she starts seeing him around the office, and in the emails about 3 months in, even though he's never seen her, she goes, I saw this cute guy today at work, and she's telling a friend, and it's him. And then he realizes after a couple of emails that he's talking about her, and she always refers to him as the cute guy. Then the friend has an interaction with him, and it's this whole thing, and she really wants to ask him out, but she has a boyfriend that is a really bad relationship. So he knows that she likes him, but doesn't know who she is
Yeah.
or what she looks like. And he's becoming like more and more in love with her based on her emails. But in the end, he gets so frustrated. They meet, and she's really beautiful and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
But he realizes nothing can ever come. So he gets really frustrated and just resigns, and then leaves her this note on her desk basically saying, I've been reading your emails. It's really fucked up. I'm really sorry. I've resigned today, so you never have to see me. I completely understand if you want to make a complaint against me. You've got every right to, but please stop putting personal shit in your emails because you're going to get sacked over it. And I've not given you a warning all this time because I've been obsessed with you. And then obviously, they get together. It'd be like that perfect rom-com movie
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that would be so good. But they
Yeah,
go
like
through a
that
lot of
stupid
trauma.
novel one you wrote about, you did with fucking Hugh Grant.
Yeah,
Paperback Hero.
it wasn't Hugh Grant.
Oh, Hugh Jackman, sorry.
Hugh Jackman. Anyway, it's such a great book. I didn't expect to love it. It's my first 5-star of the year.
Oh, wow.
And I just was absolutely obsessed. I was reading it like we were going to the dump on the weekend, and I was like reading it in the car while we were like driving up to the dump. And then we were going to pick up some food from the shops, and I'm reading it while Tyler and I are driving.
Oh,
He's like, oh my
wow.
God, you can't even put this fucking book down. I'm like, I'm obsessed. I have to finish it today.
Before I get back.
Oh, Okay, so let's get into that.
it.
It's really funny that we've actually traveled to a lot of places together.
We have.
May I list them for you?
Go.
So, oh, hang on. Okay, so all the international places that we've traveled. Let's not talk about the local places that we've traveled together.
No.
Please. Is New Zealand,
Yeah.
the Pacific Islands,
Well, let's be a bit more elaborate there. So
Namibia,
Vanuatu
Vanuatu.
is Namibia the country?
I
Yeah.
don't know. It's hard to say. You know, my geography's not
I
great.
think it is the country, yeah.
And then what was the other one? Starts with an M. Was it Mystery Island?
Mystery Island, yeah, which I
Yes.
think, yeah, New Caledonia is the
New
country of
Caledonia.
Namibia.
Yes.
Namibia.
Yes.
But I think
Yes.
Mystery Island is in Vanuatu.
There you go. So that's two countries that we've been to, Vanuatu and New Caledonia plus.
And New Zealand?
And New Zealand. Then we've also been to Spain, and we'll talk about that at some point, I'm
Yes, I
sure.
do have that listed.
We've been to Ireland.
Yes.
We've been to Germany.
Yes.
We've been to Singapore.
Yes.
And technically, we've been to Dubai because we were dying in the airport for our layover to Singapore. Do you remember that?
We
And I had
did.
no clean clothes.
Yes, you
And I
stank.
had no underwear on and just a jumper, and it was stinking hot, and I couldn't take it off because I just had a bra underneath.
Yeah.
Because I had nothing that was clean because we'd spent like 4 days in Germany in Oktoberfest.
Yeah.
And I was too drunk to ever do any washing.
And we just come from Ireland as well, yeah.
Yes. So what was the first thing we were going to talk about?
Living abroad.
Oh, yes. And also, I just want to say that I love talking about traveling, and I love listening to other people's stories about travel. There's so many places that I want to go. I don't think I'll ever stop wanting to
Yeah,
travel. And it makes me
same.
really sad when I go for really big chunks of time because I can't afford it to actually
Well, that's what
travel.
makes me sad too, is, and this is the thing, like, and I love a sunburnt country. I love Australia,
Oh, true.
but
Totally. I love seeing places in Australia that I haven't
living
been.
in Europe and just having that flexibility to be able to travel on a weekend or a
Yeah.
long weekend to do something,
Yes.
God, that just
Just
because
go to
when you're in
Amsterdam.
Australia, exactly, when you're in Australia and you do travel, you have to do a 2 week at least, really, when you do a big trip. And then you don't have enough leave and you don't have enough money to do all the things that I just want to tick off.
Yeah, but that's rich because you travel all the fucking time.
But I can still only travel a
It's
maximum of
ridiculous.
4 weeks a year. You know what I mean?
It's ridiculous how many countries that you have been to that I haven't been to. I hate you for that.
I'd love to
Um,
list the countries I went to, actually. I don't know if I
Also,
could.
why can't we be billionaires?
I know.
So we can just travel all the time. It's so
Even
unfair.
even millionaires. I'd settle for a millionaires. Millionaires.
Okay, so we both lived abroad.
Yeah.
But when I moved to England, it was the year 2000, and it was a time when no one really did it. Everyone was shocked and horrified that I would go so far away. My parents were particularly worried. So was my sister. So I was 20. And they were super worried about me going to Dubai. They didn't even really know where it was or what it
Yeah.
was until I explained it to them. And to be honest, I don't think I had even heard of Dubai until I met my ex-husband, who had been there multiple times. And I was like, "Where's Dubai? What's that?"
Yeah.
And I've actually been there twice.
It wasn't on the postcards for us, really, was it?
No,
Yeah.
it wasn't really someplace that people went.
Yeah.
And I went there twice, and then the third time together when we had the layover there.
Yes.
I turned 21 when we got back because I was there just under a year that I lived in England. And when I left to go to England, my whole family came to the airport. So that was before you could fly Emirates out of Brisbane. They only flew out of Melbourne, maybe Sydney, but we had to get a domestic flight from Brisbane to Melbourne to get the Emirates flight, which was the cheaper flight to go out. So everyone came to the airport to see us off. Like, I'm talking extended family. So it was like my mum, my dad, my sister, my brother-in-law. I had uncles there. About 10 of our friendship group came to see me off. And I remember as I was like walking up to the tunnel to get onto the domestic flight, my uncle was singing, "Leaving on a jet
Because
plane."
in the Brisbane airport, you can still stand in where the visitors can be in the departure and
Yes.
look down into the
So
Yeah.
everyone came and watched us walk onto the tunnel to get to the flight and everything. And it was this whole massive deal. Um, but and the other thing that I wanted to mention was that I flew on Emirates when you could still smoke, and we
Yeah.
sat in the smoking area,
Yeah.
and ended up getting an upgrade to business class because we had booked smoking seats and our tickets clearly said it, and they ran out of smoking seats from the leg from Dubai
Wow.
to England. But I was traveling on an Australian passport and I had a working visa, and they were very, very strict about working visas
Mhm.
coming into England back then. So I had to have an interview at customs when I got there. And my ex-husband, who we weren't married at the time, but he was on an English passport, he got shit-faced on the flight, and I could only drink like one cocktail because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to go
You
through
got to do an
customs.
interview.
And I
Yeah.
had to actually like fill out a whole questionnaire about, I had to have references of people that I was going to live with, and they had to fill out forms for me before I left. It was this whole screening process. So I was like the first time out of the
Mm.
country, like I'd been to Dubai for 3 weeks on the way there. But I was still like
So did you
culture
stay in
shocked.
Dubai for 3 weeks on the way there?
Yeah, we did. And then we stayed there for, I think, a week on the way back.
And look, to be fair, with what you were saying before, I think like people were doing the living abroad thing all the time, but you were definitely the first in our crew that
Mm.
even thought about doing something like that.
At 20 too. I was only
Yeah,
20. I was a baby. And Jamie
I
and
love that. I
my
love that you
ex-husband
had
and
that
I,
confidence and the pizzazz to be able to make that decision and do it at that
the
age.
only reason I went was Jamie. If I had not met him, it would never have happened. It was
Yeah, but you
never
still did
on
it.
my radar. It was
Still did
never
it.
even anything that remotely appealed to me. But he was going back to live there for an indefinite amount of time, and we'd, fallen in love. And he was like, "Will you wait for me?" And I was like, "Fuck no. You don't know when you're coming
Why
back."
was he going back?
Because he just loved it so much, and he'd been there. So when I met him, he had been back in Australia for maybe a month or two after
Right.
living over there for like 2 years, and then just had always planned on going back. He came back for, I think, his mum's 60th and stayed for a bit longer than he meant to because he met me.
Yeah.
And then he was like, I got to go back. Oh, that's, and his cousin was getting married. So he'd
Right.
promised, and he was best man. So he'd promised his cousin he'd be back for the wedding. So he was going back for that, but had no idea when he was coming back. And then I was like,
Cool.
well, you're going, we're breaking up. And he was like, he sat on that for a couple of weeks after I said we're breaking up. And then he asked me to go with him. And I was like, yeah, right,
Why the
sure, why
fuck
not?
not? Good on you. I love that. I love that.
And so I did. And then it totally changed my life,
Yeah,
and
I
just
get that.
had this thirst for travel after that. And then I was like, oh my God, I just have to go as many
Yeah,
places as
yeah,
I can.
yeah.
But there's other bits and pieces that I put about living abroad in England that I put more in the cultural stuff as well. So maybe I'll just let you talk about your living abroad situation and then jump in.
Okay. Well, mine goes for a bit longer because I have lived in three other countries outside of Australia. But touching on what you just said too, so my love of travel came from my mum. I got to go to Fiji with my mum and my stepfather when I was 13. I was very lucky. My brothers were ropeable at the time that I had all these opportunities, and then again in Bali when I was 14. And even though I was still young doing that, it was still great, and I loved the travel. My mum's English, originally moved over in 1969, and then you'd gone over to London. Louisa had gone over to London, and I thought, fuck it, I'm going to go to London. Maria and I had always spoken about traveling Europe together, probably 5 years before I even hung out with Louisa and
Mm.
you. Louisa, Maria and I had spoken about doing this big European trip around the same time I was printing all the Las Vegas hotels out. Um,
Because
and
I was devastated when you left because I just had my
we
son,
just, yeah,
and you were going,
our
and I
friendship
remember,
was sort of really blossoming at that time, big time.
I went to your going away party, and I remember being so devastated, and I was like, please come back soon.
I don't
And
know
you
when I'm
didn't. You
coming
stayed for
back.
ages.
2.5 years. So I moved to London, and I was fortunate enough to have a British passport because of my parents. But yeah, in September 2006, I moved over to London until June 2009. it was, or June 2009. But we went via Japan, but the same on Japan airline, but the same deal. When we went to the airport, of course, all my family, well, Stuart wasn't able to be there, but my family, Nikki came with Brady, who was just a baby at that time. It was really emotional. Maria's family all came. Maria was only going for 6 weeks, but her family came and they were all bawling, saying goodbye to her. It was just such a big thing that we were all doing.
Mm.
And the same deal as I remember waving as we walked down the tunnel and shit. But it was my first stint living abroad. It was two and a
Did you
half
fly
years.
international from Brisbane or did you have to
Yes.
fly domestic first? Okay, yeah,
No, we
because it
could because
changed
we
not long,
did,
I think, after.
and we were going with Japan Airlines. So we went Brisbane, Japan, Japan, London.
Right.
And yeah, my first stint living abroad for 2.5 years, lived in a lovely little town called Hammersmith, aka Hammertown Place in London. It's where all the Aussies go, which I found out afterwards. I lived in a four-bedroom house with 7 people. One person had their own room. It was a shoebox, but all the others shared a room. The room I shared was massive. It had two double beds, two built-in wardrobes. So it was like not, we weren't squeezed in. It was definitely enough room. The big reason I went was I was able to get a UK passport, and also I'd come out of the closet, the proverbial, a couple of years prior, but life wasn't changing for me like I'd hoped it would. I'd hoped like this big fanfare of glitter and sparkles was going to happen, and men would be throwing themselves at me. So anyway, I went over to have a fresh start at life, the new me, hopefully meet the man of my dreams, all that shit. Went over, had the best fucking time of my life. As you said, what you did when you did it was the best thing you did. It was the best thing I ever did. And I encourage anyone who is able to fucking do it.
I know. I say to Link all the time, just
Do it.
go.
Yeah. Well, Brady, my nephew, he's just got into a university degree in international business. And the reason why he's doing it is so he can travel. And I think in his third year, he's able to do like I don't know if it's a placement thing in London. And that's exactly what he's going to do. So lifestyle was amazing. You'd be able to walk to the pub, variety of restaurants, see any theatre show any night of the week. Night buses. Do you remember the night buses in London? They were fucking amazing.
Because you lived near London. See, I didn't live
In
near
London.
London. And
Yeah.
I'll talk about what I was doing as well in a bit. But I went to London a few times and I've been to
Yeah.
London since then. But I didn't live right near London.
Uh, the lifestyle is just incredible. The ability to travel anywhere so easily throughout Europe and all that shit, and so cheaply. I think we got when I was over there with Louisa and Lyndon, we got a £1 flight to fucking Dublin. you know, you pay all your extras for your baggage and shit, but still, it was a
But
£1 flight.
still, that's fucking nothing.
Scandinavia, Africa, anywhere, even flights to New York, it's like 8 hours from London.
Mm.
The accents, the pound, Tesco's, the pub,
Asda,
Asda, fucking, what's the one that starts with S?
Sainsbury's,
Sainsbury's, the pubs, the
Marks
Slug
and
and
Spencer.
Lettuce, Walkabout, Weatherspoons pubs, having curry and steak nights for £5 a night during the week. Snake bites. Do you remember snake bites? It would be half beer, half cider, and then a shot of blackberry juice or blackcurrant juice.
Oh, I don't know
Oh,
actually. It
pints of
sounds a
snake
little bit
bites.
familiar, but I don't. I remember us drinking a lot of Iron Brew.
Oh, iron brew.
And it was big to have
That's Scottish, isn't it?
beer with the shot of Jaeger in it.
Mm. I remember them too. Yeah, pints. That was like when pints weren't even really
You
around
couldn't
in
get
Brisbane,
pints
in
in
Queensland
Australia,
back
man. When
then.
I came back, you couldn't get pints in Brisbane, and it was like, oh, I just want a fucking pint, mate.
Yeah, give me a big fucking one. When we went over in 2022, Vinny and I, and we met up with Claire's sister Heather, who's just as mad and as mental, if not a little bit more than Claire is. We did a
Hi,
um
Claire.
we did a Christmas bottomless brunch. There were options galore to choose from. I just wanted to do a Christmas theme one. There was thousands to choose from. And it wasn't even just on the weekends. Like you go any day to these bottomless brunches. We picked a bottomless butlers in the buff bingo drag show brunch. We got slaughtered, obviously, but before we went in, we went at a Weatherspoons pub across the road, and they had some deal, and this is in 2022, at 10 in the morning, that you could make your drink a double for 50p.
There's no conservative drinking over there. There's no rules. There's no people getting kicked out all the time unless you really, really, really
Oh,
fuck up.
fucking,
It's just like get as drunk as you want, man. There's
oh,
no like, hey, you've had too much to drink. You got to get out. There's none of that.
Vinny and I
You
were
can crawl
hungover.
out, you're good.
Vinny and I were hungover, and we met up with Heather, and she was there drinking these gins, double gins in this huge glass for an extra 50p to get the double shot of gin. We got obliterated. I was amazed when I first moved there how cheap things were, cost of living wise.
Mm,
3 packs of Mars bars were £1.
mm.
Tubs of Quality Streets, £5. So you can see where my fucking passions lived. I
You love
remember
your
being,
snacks.
and I also remember when you could buy these tubs in Tesco's and Sainsbury's of egg mayonnaise. I was like, oh my God, I love egg mayonnaise. You can't buy
Mm.
tubs of that here.
And everyone dips their chips in it over there.
Oh, sandwiches of it. Made so many good friends there that I still have today. The house parties, fuck me, just impromptu ones that came out of nowhere and went for the weekend. Life was good. It was just like, even though you were on a working holiday as such, it was just like you were just on holiday the whole time that you just worked in between. I worked for a company that was very rich on Baker Street as a second PA to the chair. In that role, we would get invites at least 1 to 2 times a week to what do you call them, like venues, where they would showcase what they could do if you'd spend your money and have your event here. Our company never ever spent any money on any events, but because they were so rich, we just kept getting the invites. Then at Christmas time, it was 3 to 4 times a week. So I'd be going out and getting blind, rotten drunk at Madame Tussauds, Thorpe Park, pubs, clubs, free booze and food, and get up and go to work the next day. I even won a voucher at one of the events to have dinner at Gordon Ramsay's restaurant in Mayfair. I lost my job at that place due to the global financial crisis. They could have kept me, but the chair hated me. His first PA loved me, but he did not. He was an art and he was a bit of a horrible man, like a Miranda Priestley from The Devil Wears Prada. But to be fair, I didn't help myself either with him. I was just like, I was a bit of a brat. I just go in, I just didn't show him
Mm.
any love either.
Young
I,
people are.
I remember meeting up with Teresa at a pub in after I got made redundant, and we had pints and chatted. And when I came out of that pub and I walked home, there was this huge rainbow at the end of the street, and I just remember thinking to myself, "It's going to be okay." When I saw that, I thought everything's going to be okay. So after that happened, I then had made the decision. I couldn't get a job anywhere in London due to the global financial crisis. It hit there harder than it hit Australia. No one could get a job. So I packed up and I worked a summer in the Greek Isle of Eos. Probably one of the best things I ever did for myself. I went alone, knew absolutely nobody over there. Had no guarantee of a job when I went. The trip was hectic. I'd partied the night before with everyone in London. I'd had a minimal hour's sleep, woke up, nearly missed my flight to go. I had to run down the fucking, what do you call it, the gateway, whatever, trying to get onto the plane. And because I was the last one on, I had literally the back row seat in the middle with everyone else in the full plane. Um, what was I saying? And I remember during the whole time of traveling over there, because I had to go to Athens first, then I had to stay in a hostel, and then I had to catch a ferry to Eos. It was all just about focusing on the next leg to get to the next point instead of letting my head just explode with all the
What an
anxiety of everything.
experience, though.
So cool. But when I got passed out on the plane because I hadn't slept, and I just remember waking up to this hand on my shoulder, and I turned around and looked, and it was one of the air stewards touched my shoulder, and I opened my eyes, and there was a chick about 4 seats in front of me, turning back, looking at me with the most horrific look on her face. So I've obviously passed out and just been doing the most monstrous snoring and shit like that. The guy touched my shoulder to wake me, and I was like, whoa. And I remember saying to the guy next to me, oh, was I snoring? He was like, well, it wasn't me. I was like, oh, okay. So I was, then the plane landed, and I had to get a train to this hostel in Athens. And I can't even remember walking from the train station to the hostel or getting on the train or anything. But I remember the train ride, and there must have been a football or some sort of sports game on. Because at one stage, the train pulled up and it just got packed full of all these sporting hooligans. And I was just there with my fucking suitcase, sat in the chair, all talking Greek, had no idea what they were doing. Were they talking about me? Whatever. Just focus on the getting off. You know where the train is, follow where your station is. You just got to get off at that. It's going to be okay. And as I was sat there freaking out, I looked at the seat in front of me, and someone had drawn on the back of the seat, obviously before I'd gotten on there, a little rainbow. And I remember seeing that rainbow
Aw.
and thinking, it's okay, you're on the right track, everything's going to be okay. And
That's so cute.
and then I got to the hostel. I had no money and I was too scared to go walking around or anything like that. So I just downloaded an episode of Survivor on my laptop and watched that in the hostel and just stayed in the hostel room the whole time. And it was a shared hostel room too. The bathroom in there was literally a fucking bucket and like a hole in the ground and a tap that, a shower head that was not even above, plugged in where the tap screwy things were and shit like that. It was just so fucking alien for me. And I love Athens. Like I've always wanted to go to Athens. I loved Greek mythology and
I've
all
not
that
been to
shit.
Greece.
I wanted to do all, but didn't do any of it. I just stayed in the hostel. And then the next morning, I had to get up, get a taxi to the ferry, get there at a certain time to catch the ferry. But the taxi is like an Uber share. But I
Mm.
didn't know that. I got in the taxi and then we're pulling up on the side of the street and there was people doing the walk of shame getting in the taxi next to me. He was talking to them where they're going. We're dropping them off, then going and picking up other people. And like it was this sort of Frogger type of thing getting to the fucking ferry.
I love
Finally, I
that
got there.
culture shock that you get when you go to other countries where things are so different from what you experience, and then something happens like that. And you're like, oh my God, this is what they do
What
here.
the fuck is going on? And you don't speak the language and they're not speaking English. So you
Yeah.
don't know what the fuck is going on. I'm just like, am I actually going to get to this ferry? Got on the ferry, got to EOS, got there, got a job at the Fun Pub. That's what it was called. Loved the people I work with. Got paid €30 a day. €10 went to accommodation. €10 was held until I finished work for the summer. They'd hold on to it and then give you a
Mm,
bonus at the end. But if you
mm.
left before you finished the season, you didn't get that bonus. You just lost that £10. And the other
Wow.
£10 I got a day to live off, but I also would get four drinks and a shift and a meal every day. I
Yeah,
worked,
you
I
can
think
live
I,
that. That.
I think over the 6 months that I was there, I worked every single day except for four. And that was because I'd had tonsillitis twice. Like bad. It's the best summer I ever had. I got so much confidence from it all. Then I came back to Oz. And after all my journeys of going overseas to meet the man of my dreams, I came back to Oz and met the man of my dreams, who then had to move back to Ireland 2 months after we'd met. So that was how life worked. Then, after meeting that fucker, I had another experience living abroad where we went and moved over to Auckland, which we had to do for our de facto visa for 12 months. Best experience. But listeners, you can learn more about that, I think, in our Meet the Hosts episode when we first started and we talk about that. It was all totes worth it. We've been together 15 years this year and married 11
Fuck.
of those. So that's my living abroad experiences.
Wow.
Uh,
That's just, I just love hearing that story so much because I remember us communicating the whole way through it by email. Even when you're in Greece, you sent me a couple of random emails and were
yes.
like, you know,
Well, I used to do like remember even back then too, and I think you did it, Nikki did it. You wouldn't sort of you didn't have Facebook. So when you were traveling, people just get this email of what had been happening that went out to the broadcast to all the
yes,
contacts and shit like
yes.
that. And I've still got all mine.
I used to have to go to the library to get onto the internet and send all the emails to
Me too.
people.
Yeah, internet
Um,
cafes.
yeah, and that's what I did. Um, but my experience was very different to you living in England because we went to London at first, and then which was a complete culture shock for me, and then I ended up in Hartlepool, which is at the top of England, which is where my ex-husband was from.
Yes.
So
That's
we
Newcastle way, isn't it?
yeah, it's about an hour's from Newcastle. And we went to Newcastle a few times. I had a friend who came and she was traveling, and I met up with her in Newcastle. And that was really cool. We had a crazy few nights out and stuff. And she came to stay with me for a little bit. But we did the whole family thing. So we got there. And as soon as I got to Hartlepool, they just took me in as one of their own. And it was,
Which
you
would
know,
have
like
been so cool.
it was like Sunday dinners at everyone's house. Every
Nice.
weekend was like a house party, and you'd go around to different people's houses all the time. And it was always like people were so,
And that's
so
such a
happy to see us.
different experience to have too, where you're sort of really immersing yourself in the culture of how it is to live there.
It was, and I have such fond memories, and I'm still, attached to a lot of the family, even though I'm not with my ex-husband anymore. And obviously, they're my son's relatives.
Yes, yeah.
Um, but when we got to England, we, did all the family thing, partied really hard for a while, and then, and the money started to dwindle, and we had to start working. And then the first job that I got was being a dinner lady at the local high school. So I
Really?
did two shifts. So I used to, because I needed extra cash, and they got me. So it was a friend, a cousin's friend's mother worked at the high school, and she got me a job there. And at first, it started off as just being a dinner lady. So I used to go
And they're
in.
dinner ladies in London. That, like, I'd imagine it's quite different to being a tuck shop lady in Australia.
Oh, we used to serve them hot dinners, and it was like
Wow.
potato gems and hot chips and baked beans, and I think there was eggs and sausages and whatever. So I used to do that every day, and it was only like a 2 hour shift. So I used to rock up. I'd help prep. Usually there was a cook who'd prep the food, but I'd bring it all out and put it in a line, and I'd stand there at these massive windows because it was all enclosed cafeteria, and all the kids would come up, and they used to adore me because I was Australian, and because it was
Yeah.
like in this, smaller type town. It wasn't like London. They hadn't met Australians before. So they were
Yes.
like, oh my God. So the kids used to come up and make jokes with me, and I'd have a real laugh. And I was only 20.
Yeah.
And then I needed a bit of extra money. So the same lady who got me the job, she got me like a monitor job that I would do in the morning. So I would get up early, and I would go when all the before school kids were coming, and we'd open the canteen up, and they'd all buy packets of polos. And they'd come up, and we'd open the canteen. I didn't serve the canteen. I used to wear a big coat, a big like navy coat over whatever I was wearing that went right down to my ankles, and it had like a collar. And I was just like this, lady. And they used to be like, "Oh my God, the dinner lady's in the morning too." And they'd all come up, and they used to chat to me for ages. So I'd go there every morning. I'd do like an hour and a half watching these kids and making sure they weren't up to. And there was another lady who did it with me, and then I'd go and do the lunch, and then I'd serve the lunch, and then someone else would clean. I'd do a little bit of cleaning, and that was it. So I think I worked like 3.5 hours a day
Wow.
doing that.
Was the
Um,
pay
it
crap?
was pretty terrible. And then I think my ex-husband was doing a bit of laboring at the time, and then we applied for a job at Asda. And so, which is the
Yes.
massive supermarket then. So we both got the jobs because we were Australian. We went in for the interview together. They were like, "Oh my God, we have to hire you. You guys are
Yeah,
Australian."
yeah.
And it got to the point where there would be a line, but they'd put us on the registers together. We were on the registers. We started shelf packing for a little bit, and then eventually they put us both on the registers, and they'd put us next to each other, and there'd be all these registers that would have no people in them, and ours would have these massive long lines because they wanted to talk to the Aussies who were together, and then
Love
they'd
that.
all come through. And then when we left, we were in the paper,
Yes,
because
yeah.
they did a whole news article about the fact that we were going home. We had this huge going away party at Asda where we all went out and had this completely debaucherous night. It was tears. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe the Aussies are going. And I remember crying on my last day there. And I remember the big boss of Asda came down. He's like, why are you upset? And I was like, because it's different when you're leaving home because you're going back. But when you're leaving a place that you've been at,
Yeah, you don't know if you're
I
coming
don't
back.
know if I'm going to see these people again. And they made us this whole massive photo album of every single person that worked in Asda. And they all had put a photo and then wrote an inscription underneath the photo for us.
Wow.
And it was the book of "Please don't forget us.
Oh,
We
wow.
won't forget you."
Oh, God, that's beautiful. That is so
I know.
nice.
And in the photo where we're in the newspaper, I'm in the trolley and Jamie's pushing me with his legs out. And I'm like,
And what about the Sky story?
the what?
Sky. Sky from Neighbours.
Oh yes, and they used to all be all the time. They used to either say I was Sky. I think the first time I met Jamie's grandparents, they said to me, "Sky, like the telly, like the Sky channel."
Right.
And then they always used to say Sky from Neighbours, and I was like, "Well, she came in later than I was born, so like
Yeah,
she didn't
I'm
get the
the
name from
original
me."
Sky.
But when we used to go to the pubs, they used to play the Neighbours song for us when we walked in. They're like, "The Aussies are here! Let's
I
put the
love
Neighbours
that.
song on!" And we'd
So
be
you're
like,
like
"Oh, the
superstars.
Aussies are here!" We were totally like mini celebrities, and everyone knew who we were. And we just constantly had people just coming up and talking to us. So it was like it was a different experience from what other
Yeah,
people would
yeah,
have
yeah, of
going to like
course.
England now.
Yeah.
Um,
But that's
but
totally your experience, and I love that.
yes, and I loved every single minute of it. And when we were leaving, everyone said to me, "You're leaving because of the cold." And I was like, "No, I fucking love the cold. The
Yeah.
cold's not a problem. The reason that we're leaving is because I desperately miss my family."
Yeah, yeah.
Desperately miss my parents and my sister, which I never thought was possible because I was like, "See you later, guys. I'm out."
And
When
I'm
I
out.
left. And then I did really, really miss them. And the reality was I got super fucking homesick.
Yeah, you are a very close family.
Yeah, and I had to come home because of that. So yeah, but yeah, I was still partying heavily all the time. And one of the culture things that I was going to say is like when we used to go to the pubs, that used to crack me up because it'd be the middle of winter and everyone would dress in these tiny, skimpy dresses and not take a coat with them because you'd have to pay to coat check it. So you'd
Yeah.
go in this tiny little dress and you'd be freezing on the way there, and you'd get into the pub and you'd be like fine because it was hot, and then you'd come out when the pubs finally closed, and you'd run from the pub to the chippy, and you'd get because you'd be
Yeah.
freezing, you
A
get in the
cone of
warmth of the
chips.
chippy,
Yeah.
and you get your chips with your
Battered
vinegar on them.
salve.
And then you'd sit in the chippy like in a massive line, like trying to smash your food, and then you'd run from the chippy to the taxi that was waiting, freezing the whole time, jump in the back, and you'd all like wrap each other around each other because it was so cold
That
until
is
you
such
got
a culture
home.
thing there too. I do remember every club, every nightclub, every bar, like that all have that coat check. You go get your coupon and then you better hold on to that fucking coupon.
Yes.
Because if you didn't have that when you left, you were fucked.
Well, they were all like, don't risk it. No, people steal your coats. You fucking be fine. You're all right. You're not going to get that cold. We'll protect you. And then we'd literally be all of us like in a big
Penguins.
huddle,
Like
walking over to
penguins.
the chippy, like running,
Everyone
trying
gets
to
their
keep
turn in
each
the
other
center.
warm. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
It was a great time.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's next? I'm
Do you
feeling a
want to
little bit
do
pissy. Oh, going
stupid?
into the tune, they used to call it. Going into the tune. The
What's the
town.
tune?
The
Oh, the
town.
tune. The
They're going
tune.
into the tune.
Do you want to do our stupid bitch say what travels together?
Yes, we
Yeah.
should. Can I? Yes, the first time we were in a different country together was New Zealand when I came to visit you guys when you were living there, trying to get Vinny's visa,
Yes,
and I brought little Linky Lulu with me.
that's right. How long were you there for?
I
Was it
think
for like
only
four
a week.
nights? Yeah,
No,
a week.
well,
Yeah.
I think it was a week, but I think I stayed a couple of days with
Sarah.
with my ex husband's um, cousin.
Yeah.
And then, because remember, she picked me up from the airport and you kept messaging me, like, where the fuck are you? Because she said, oh, the traffic's really bad coming from the airport. We'll wait until after peak hour. Let's go to the pub and
Mm.
have a few drinks. And I remember we drank like 2 bottles of wine. Um, and fucking, you were ringing me going, and I think Jamie was, I don't think you were, I don't know if I had my
I don't
phone
know,
on or
had
something,
service. Yeah.
but I think I was getting all these messages from Jamie and from you going like, where are you? Where are you? And Jamie's like, the boys are wondering where you are. Are you okay? And I don't think I had internet connected. And then when I finally got internet, there was just all these messages
Hmm.
from everyone going, are you dead? It's like, no, I
Where the
got stuck
fuck are you?
drinking at the pub with Sarah.
Surprise,
And because she had
surprise.
kids around Link's age, and I remember they were just all running amok and stuff.
Yeah.
And I went and stayed with her, I think, for a couple of nights and then came back to you guys, I think.
Yes, I think that's how. Yeah, you left us to go back.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then we finished up together because I remember we went to the museum on the day that we left.
That's right. Yeah.
And Lincoln Vinny were colouring
We're doing the
at that
colouring in
museum.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
I've
we
got
went to the
photos of
zoo
them.
and that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it was also around the time that the World Cup was on.
Yeah. But I had been to New Zealand the year before because I nearly didn't come to visit you because for my 30th, I decided to go to New Zealand and I took Link, and it was just Link and I that went to New Zealand together. And again, we saw Jamie's cousin, but we stayed in a hotel the whole time. And we saw Jamie's family a little bit because there's a few of them that live over there.
Yeah.
And then the year later, you had moved over. And then I was trying to buy a house and then I couldn't find a house. And I nearly didn't come. And I was like, oh, I don't think I can do it. I'm trying to buy this house. And then the house fell through.
Yeah.
And then I came and then I brought the house just after.
That's right. Yeah. But yeah, no, that was good fun. And then after that, it was even more celebrations when we met up in Magaluf in Spain, Mallorca, for mine and Vinny's Bucks weekend. Well, we partied together, but we had a Bucks night separately. It was the start of our wedding trip. It was absolute carnage. Belinda and Blair, I have that as a note. So the day we met you was the same day we met Belinda and Blair, but they came in the afternoon.
And we were already well into it by the time Belinda and Blair got there. And then we just were pouring alcohol down their throats trying to make them catch up.
Well, we were meant to go out that night. Blair got, was Blair found passed out in the toilet or was Belinda?
They both got carried up by security, I'm pretty sure.
to their room.
I pushed Belinda in the pool and made her strip down to her bra, I think.
So we kept getting in trouble for drinking in the pool.
And then she ended up getting out of the pool and maybe going to the bathroom or something, and then passed out, and security took her up. And then
Yeah,
later on, I
Blair
think
got
we
dragged
had
up.
already gone out. I think we had gone
No,
out.
I remember calling Belinda's room to say, "Hey, we're going out." And then I was talking to security or someone. I was like, "Can I speak to my friend?" And then Belinda's on the phone. She's like, "Oh yeah, this is not good. This is not good. Blair's just been brought in for we're not going to make it tonight." I'm like, "Okay." And then the next night we had the Bucks, and that was the night Karen and all the Irish arrived.
And we went to that foam party.
Yes. Well, I stayed outside with Jamie because I only had thongs on. I'm like, I'm not going into that phone party.
Yeah, and
And
I went
then,
in. They all coaxed me, and then I was like, "Ew, I don't want to go and foam it." Imagine how dirty this foam is. How many times it's been like regenerated, and
yeah.
it's just gross and full of sweat and disgustingness. And then I got dragged in anyway, and I remember just coming out like absolutely saturated from foam, and that
And,
was night one
and Jamie and I stayed out at the pub that we'd all met at originally and
because it was
waited for you
across
to
the
come
road.
out.
The
And
foam party was across the road from that
Stuart
pub we
was
were sitting at
playing the drums with his
with
thongs on
his
the
thumbs
bench.
on.
And fucking Eleanor's husband was losing his shit. You were wetting yourself.
I was wetting myself. And then we had the Bucks night,
And
and
then the
Vinny
next night,
didn't didn't go
last. So we
didn't
had our
last.
separate ways. And then I went out with you guys and my friends, and Vinny went out with his family. And then we did our bits and pieces. We went from pub to pub. I just remember getting free drinks everywhere. Do you remember that big fishbowl drink we got?
That we left for those young kids because
It
we
was
couldn't drink it because it was just
horrendous.
methylated spirits.
Yeah.
And then we left it pretty much full on the table, and these
And they were
young
like,
teenagers come
yes,
up
we
and like,
want that.
"Can we have that?" And we were
But
like,
yeah.
"Fucking, it's all yours. Don't die, man."
Do you remember that when we were sat there too, there was a guy passed out on the street, and then
I
a guy
remember that.
walked up to him and stole his shoes and wallet. And we're like, what the
Yes,
fuck?
I do remember that. Do you remember
And
the helicopter
I
guy?
was going to just say the helicopter, the guy with the kilt, and I think the island hired him. He'd just walk around, lift his kilt up, and swing his massive
It
penis
was huge.
in a fucking helicopter.
I remember we
Um,
kept saying because he kept itching. He was
yeah,
itching.
like
We were
how
like, "He's got
festy it is.
crabs.
Yeah.
He's got crabs."
And then I got a message from Vinny's brother saying story at about midnight. I was like, oh, we're here. Where are you guys? And we went up to meet them, and they were all out having a fucking cracker of a night. And I'm like,
That's
where's Vinny?
right. We
And
ended up in that pub with them.
Vinny's like, Dipner's like, Vinny's gone home. Like, haha, where is he? And they're like, no, he's gone home. He didn't even last an hour. I was like, what the fuck? I'm having the best night of my fucking life. Where is Vinny? He'd skitzed out and gone back to bed.
They got him a cake and everything, and he couldn't even last with the
Yeah.
cake.
And then we had to leave that. Well, we had to leave the next morning. You didn't. And that was hell. That was so hell, that flight back. Everyone was fucking dead on the plane. It was so much fun.
And we had to stay one extra night, but we were just so fucked. It
I
was
wish we'd
just
stayed an extra night.
horror. But also the way over was that party fucking plane that I
Yes.
went on, and the stewardess was crying in the back end because she couldn't get the card out because we got on
Everyone
at
just
five
lined
o'clock
up
and
in
we
the
were in
morning, five
Newcastle
o'clock in the morning.
at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we were coming from Newcastle, and most of the people who were getting on that plane had just kept drinking through the night, all the English, and they were going to party, and they were all shit faced when they got on, and I was sat. So Jamie was across the aisle from me. So we obviously we weren't married at that point. We were divorced by then, and he was sat across and I was on the other side, and I had these two dudes who'd been drinking all night, and they were buying double rounds, and they just kept getting me a double. Like I had two drinks. I was like fucking, just had all these drinks on my little tiny table, and like, drink up. I was like, girl, drink up. And by the time I got to the airport, I was shit faced, and Jamie had the UK passport, so he went through the express line, and because
Yes.
I was Aussie, I was lined up with all the plebs for ages, and it
I
was
remember
so hot.
I remember the phone call in the room. You just called and you said, where are you? I was like, oh my God, they're here.
And then we got the all you can drink. We had a full buffet for
Yeah.
every meal included in our accommodation, and the accommodation was cheap as shit anyway. But we paid $25 a day to just eat toasted cheese sandwiches and chips because
We
we
got
didn't
so
want to
many.
leave the bar.
And I remember fucking even going to one of the buffet dinners with Vinny's dad and Mari, and like blind as fuck trying to be civilized in that. Oh, this looks delicious. Oh, is that chicken? Is that a proper hen?
And remember the cup towers? So
Yeah.
the English always do this thing where they put all the cups and they just keep going and going because so it's like a record of how many drinks you've had at a table. And we had like multiple towers just all the way up. No one could fit another cup on top
And do you
of the
remember
tower. They were so high.
the cocktails came out of a push a button? They were terrible, but so much fun.
And that hill where because our
Oh
accommodation was
God.
so high on the hill, it was a beautiful view, but we had to walk like
And
this.
it was over 45 degrees, the angle of the hill, and it was 100 meters. Do you remember you'd get to it and you'd be like, oh,
I can't
and
do
then you start
this.
walking up and start walking backwards up the hill trying to get
Yeah,
there.
and you'd stop at the time. You're like, oh yeah, I can't keep going. I
And
can't keep
then you'd,
going.
if you wanted to get to the beach from the side of the pool, you had to walk down 1,000 steps to get to it. And
Yes.
then do you remember on the night of the Bucks when we walked down another hill to get to a club and Kate was walking like she was fucking that android robot slipping down the hill. Do you
Well, she
remember?
fell in front of the automatic doors coming
That
into the hotel, and they were
that was
closing on
back
her.
and the doors were closing on her head and just opening and closing,
And
opening.
they wanted to kick her out that night because of
And
that.
and we got stuck in the lift.
Yes.
There was about 8 of us in this tiny lift and the thing stopped working.
We've got
And
the
then
photo of that to prove it
and
too.
Vinny's calling me going, babe, where are you? I'm like, I'm stuck in the lift. He's like, everyone's here from Ireland. Can you please get here? Babe, I'm stuck in a lift. No, you're not. You're bullshitting. You're just sat back at the unit drinking where I'm like, I'm stuck in a fucking lift. Yeah, everyone was much more happy going to Magaluf than they were leaving Magaluf. They were dead.
Well, when I came back on the plane coming home, most of the people who had come over were on the same flight going back to Newcastle, and they were all dead. On the
Yeah.
way over, they were like, woohoo, people weren't even putting their fucking seatbelts on. They were just standing up and they were trying to give like the safety speech and shit. And people were like, fuck that, give us a drink. And on the way back, everyone's like got their head in their hands, their
Yeah.
sunglasses on, no one's talking.
Even the airport, everyone was just passed out on the floor, just laying on the floor. You'd be stepping over bodies. And then we went to Clonmel, Ireland for the wedding.
We did, yes,
And
and
that
that
was
was another
another
debaucherous
series
event.
of days. The Australians took the town by storm. So
Mm-hmm.
Clonmel, which is known as the biggest inland town in Ireland, still has a population of about, what, 30,000 or something. So it's not really a big town as such. But when the Aussies came in there, the bars did all the afters, kept everyone
It
locked
went
in.
off.
The taxi drivers all knew the Australians. Give them this card, give them this card.
Yeah,
We did
we'll
the
pick you
hike.
up anytime.
We did the hike to the Holy Cross and beyond. Do you remember?
Yes. Link fell in the mud. I fell in the mud trying to save him.
I pulled you out of the mud.
Push me up a giant cliff
Yeah,
to
that's
get
right.
back on track.
And then from Clonmel, we went to Munich,
Yes.
your happy place.
My
Sky
happy
said after
place.
Munich, when I die, I want my bones to be buried in Oktoberfest so people dance on my body and drink beer for years and
I
years to
stand by
come.
that. I stand by that. I
Scatter
want
your
to be
ashes.
buried in Oktoberfest underneath the Hofbräu tent.
The Hofbrau tent, yeah. Fucking hell. 3 nights of debauchery. Vinny lost his phone.
Mm-hmm.
The
I lined up with
Vikings.
you while we tried to find it. We
Oh,
met a bunch of Vikings who, one of the biggest Vikings out of all of them, could literally pick me up and put me onto a table or a stool by just getting me and lifting me up. He was so giant.
he was huge. And do you remember? And he wasn't very blessed in the facial department, but we
No,
were
he
like,
wasn't.
does he have a big penis? And they're like, yes, he's got a
It's
monster
huge.
cock.
That's what they were saying. And I'm still friends with them all on Facebook.
I'm friends with one of them who dresses up as Thor from the Avengers a
Oh, the
lot. The
American. He was
American,
the
yeah.
American. Yeah, I'm still friends with him too.
I also remember Vinny and I was stood outside the Hofbrau tent. I think we're having a cigarette, and these guy came up, and I don't know what his accent was, but it was like, "Hey, do you want to fuck a dead chick?" And it was with a friend, and we're like, "No," and he's like, "Would you like to fuck a dead chick?" I was like, "No, we're gay. Can you fuck off?" And he's like, "Yeah," and he started giving us shit about being
I remember
gay,
that.
and I'm
Yeah.
like, the nerve to call me sick for being gay, and you want me to fuck a dead chick? What the fuck are you talking about, you weirdo?
But listeners, if you've never been to Oktoberfest, it
In
is
Munich.
seriously the experience of a lifetime. It's like standing on tables. Well, you're not allowed on the table, you're allowed on the
And
stool, the
chairs.
chairs next to the table, which are long bench seats, and you have giant leader steins in your
Yeah.
hand, and
And
everyone prosts every time they sing all the songs.
I'm
And if you
Prosit,
smash it
I'm
if you hit it in the
Prosit.
wrong way, it smashes everywhere.
But but you remember you'd buy like three steins as you were starting. Like you'd have a stein at a time, but after the third stein, you didn't buy any more. Somehow you just ended up with more beer in a stein. You'd put your beer
Everyone
down, you'd
was
pick
just
up another
sharing them
one.
around, and then
Yeah.
you'd have someone next to you who couldn't speak English, and you were hugging them, and you were like singing the songs to a German song that don't know the words to, and you got this person next to you that you've never met before who can't speak English, and you're like, yeah, this is the best moment of my life.
And some random person would stand up and start chugging the beer. And
Yep. and
everyone in the hall would just stop and just start cheering and clapping.
and they play that song, and it was always the dudes who couldn't finish it, and it was always the chicks who could finish it.
Could, yeah.
Every time they stood up, they could always smash it.
Smash it. Yes,
I
yes,
could
yes.
never drink a whole liter of beer in one go. Like that's impossible for me. I
I'll
couldn't
give
even
it a
drink half
crack,
of it.
but I'll be sure to throw it up afterwards, not from
Mm.
being drunk, just from having that much beer in my gut at one time.
And do you remember that dude behind us when people were prosting and then one of the glasses shattered and he got a massive chunk of glass in the
Yeah.
front of his leg and his leg had a massive gash and he was pissing blood out and everyone's like, dude, you have to go to the hospital. He's like, I'm good. And he was like holding it together with his hand while he's still drinking beer going, I'm not going in. And blood's like pissing out everywhere. And eventually security came and just dragged him out. They're like, dude, you got
It's
to go
time. It's
to
time.
emergency.
Get your gingerbread
You're
heart and get the
bleeding
fuck out of here.
everywhere.
And then we went from Munich to Singapore. We had a
Yes.
night in Singapore each. Well, we were there for
I
three
think we
nights, I
had
think.
two. Oh, we had two and you had three, I think.
Yeah, we met up with Maria over there, and then you stayed at the Marina Bay Sands,
Yes, which had the infinity pool, which looks out all over.
like a ship.
Yeah, and it looks out all over Singapore, and it's just like a cliff of water, and it was gorgeous. But I
Yeah.
think we got there late in the afternoon, and then stayed there that night, and just completely passed out. And then the next
Yes.
night, we went out for dinner in like one of the
And we did all the,
Chinatowny Singapore
yes,
villages.
that's right.
And then the next day we left and came
Yeah.
home, and then I had that huge coleslaw on my face because I'd partied so hard for 6 weeks.
Ew. And then our next
my
trip
body
after
had finally
that,
said, Sky, fucking chill the fuck out, man. You partied for 6
you're not
weeks.
kissing anyone with a face
Slow
like
down.
this. And then our next trip together after that was the cruise for someone's 35th birthday.
It was for my 35th birthday, and we had another debaucherous time where we
Yes.
just pretty much drank cocktails for breakfast.
Toblerone cocktails.
Drunk through the
1,800
day.
calories in one cocktail. I just drank so many of them. Do you remember the chef's dinner that we did?
Yeah, that was lovely. And
That
they
was
took us for
awesome.
the tour, and the food was really nice. But do you remember the boat
That was one of the
rocking?
highlights. Oh, yes.
And it rocked like this. And everyone at least got sick one time except for me and Jason. We were just like totally fine.
I didn't throw.
And we were
But
on
I remember
the
the dance floor,
and you'd go
which
like
was
this, and you'd have
at
to
the
hold your
nightclub.
drink.
But the nightclub was at the top of the boat.
Yeah.
So when it tipped, everyone would be like shuffling down one side of the dance floor and then shuffling back down the other.
Yeah, and do you remember every port that we went to, helicopters would come in because people were using their travel insurance because the weather was so bad and they were getting picked up. And by the time the ship docked back in Australia in Brisbane, the boat was half empty because so many people got picked up because the ship was rocking
Well,
so
do you remember I didn't get seasick,
You got the
but I
flu.
got, like a flu really bad. And I remember feeling it come on in Vanuatu, and I went to a pharmacy and I'm like, can I get some antibiotics, please? And then I was out for about 2 days.
You ended the last 2 days. I think you pulled up
back.
okay the second last, but the last
Yes.
night you were like, I'm out, I'm too sick, I gotta go.
All right. So what's your favorite places that you've ever been to?
Look, obviously it's Oktoberfest.
Yes.
Obviously it's Germany. And look, it's not just the beer festival that I love. There was many different things about Germany that I loved, especially the people, even though it was probably the one place in Europe that I found people didn't speak as much English as a lot of the other places in Europe. So I found like I was constantly trying like in German shops and restaurants and things. I was
Dunker.
like, they don't understand me. I don't understand them. What's on
Yeah.
the menu? I can't read it. I'll have this. So Germany's up there. Look, I think I've loved all the places that I've been. Amsterdam, oh my God, one of the coolest places
Yes,
I've ever
actually, I don't
been.
even have that on my list.
I went to the Van Gogh Museum, and again, I was with my son and my ex-husband, and I was like, if you guys aren't going to really get into it, you need to leave me here, go do something else, and just leave me here for a couple of hours. And I was literally there for a couple of hours, just like walking through. And I remember at the end, I was like in tears, just from
Wow.
like his whole, because it was like a museum that told his whole life story from beginning to end. So the pictures, like it was like a story
Yeah.
board. So every painting had a story behind what he was doing at that point in his life, and it just kept going through chronological order. And it was just so emotional and such a beautiful experience. So, have you been to the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam?
No.
You have to go. It's just so it's amazing. But we also nearly missed our boat leaving. We were literally running up, and they were like, we're about to close the gate, and we had legs dragging in behind us. Um, and we got on just in time, because if we had missed it, we would have missed Magaluf.
All right. You dumb bitch.
But Amsterdam was really fucking cool. But I really, really, really loved Bali too. And Bali
Yeah.
can't compare to the European
Yes.
countries,
Yeah.
but the cheapness,
Yeah.
the Balinese are just gorgeous.
Beautiful, beautiful
Um,
people.
they're just so lovely, and just everywhere you go, like you don't pay much, and it's just such excellent service and
Yeah.
excellent. It's like a 5-star hotel, and you're paying peanuts for it, and
Yeah.
it's just such
They're just so
luxury.
appreciative and beautiful
Oh,
people. Yeah.
it's just such a lovely place. So I love that place too. There's just, yeah, so many places that I love.
Yeah, agreed. Like I love London for obvious reasons.
Oh
I'd
yeah,
love to live
great.
there again. My heart's in London. When it comes to lifestyle and living, anytime we head back to Ireland, we always include at least 4 nights in London, if not more.
Yeah, I love London.
Um,
It's great.
Amsterdam, as you said, I've just added that to the list. I love Amsterdam. Vinny and I both love it. The Heineken factory, that was so much fun. And Frank's
Italy,
house.
Venice is fucking awesome. I love
Venice
Venice
is
so
beautiful.
much.
Venice is beautiful. The
When
gay
it
culture in
floods,
Amsterdam.
when it
Yes.
floods, and you're like, everyone's shutting their shop doors and stuff, and the water's just rising before your eyes, and you're like, what is happening? And you're like trudging through the water. It's
Yeah,
just so fucking cool.
so much out there. Vinny and I had always said as well, like if we couldn't live in London, we'd totally even live in Amsterdam. Like I'd just
Oh,
love to live
without a
there.
doubt.
I love parts of America, San Francisco. There's such a vibe. I'd love to go back there and spend more time there again. Vegas, the shows, the casinos, the free drinks. We got officially married in Vegas at the Graceland Chapel where Bon Jovi got married, please. Um,
Yay.
Funny story about that. When we got married, it was just Vinny and I because we were just on our trip, and we'd had our big wedding in Ireland, but it was a civil ceremony at the time. And when we got married in Vegas, the two women that were there sort of felt like we had been shunned by our families and all that. It was a forbidden love, and they sort of pinned the things onto us for us. And we didn't tell them any different. We just lapped up the attention. And then when we walked, there was another group of English people getting married after us, and they had all their friends there and their family and shit like that. And one of the mothers had come in while we were getting married and seen it was just the two of us, and we had no one there to witness. Like we had the photographer and the celebrant witness our wedding papers. And when we walked out, she'd obviously said to the people, "Oh, guys, these lads are in there, and it's just the two of them. Give them a big cheer." When we walked out, and we walked out, and the whole family were there cheering and going, "Oh, congratulations!" Rah, rah, rah. And like it
Oh
just
my
sort of made it so much
God.
special too. West Hollywood, Vanderpump, as I spoke. After we had dinner with Lisa Vanderpump, Vinny and I walked past these gay bars, and we literally walked past one. And as we were walking past it, I think it was called something to do with jocks or something like that. We just hear this, and here one of the UK X Factor finalists performing tonight is Kitty Brucknell. And when we lived in New Zealand, Kitty Brucknell was a person in X Factor that when we were watching the shows that I was supporting. And literally, as we were walking past, they said that, and we're like, "Get the fuck out of town." We ran into the club, got photos with her and shit like that. Um, Iceland, it's beautiful,
I'd
absolutely stunning
love to
place.
go to Iceland so bad.
they served mink whale on their menu. I didn't have it, but I had nut loaf instead, which was actually quite nice. We went there with Kim and Sam. We did a glacier hike, went up this hike, one of the big glaciers, and it was part of the tour that we were on. You got to hike up there. Kim didn't realize it was so cross country type of hiking, and she was terrified the whole time. And then when we got back, like you're actually marching in ice, and when the wind would blow, because there's no trees in Iceland because they cut them all down for wood, the wind would blow you. And when it happened, they'd be like, hunker down. You'd have to like stamp your spike boots into the glacier and hunker down. And Kim was saying all that. Then when we got
Sounds
off
like
the
me when I went on that hike in Ireland.
when we got off the glacier, and we were talking to Kim about it, she's like, that was the most horrific thing I've ever done. Bro. I'm like, aren't you glad you've done it now, though? She's like, no, no, I would never do that again. I did not know that's what we were signing up for. That was terrible. It was so much fun. Um, yeah, so they're my favorites. Now, lessons learned.
Oh, I don't really know that I have lessons learned. I've got a lot of cultural stuff that I wanted to talk about, but
Oh,
not really
yeah,
lessons. I don't think I think that actually I will tell one really funny story, which isn't really a lesson learned for me. But when we went to Euro Disney, because we had traveled to quite a few places before that, we went to Euro Disney and everything's so expensive. And Euro Disney is a whole vibe too, by the way.
yeah.
I was only going there for the kids because we had some of Link's cousins with us as well. It was like this whole thing, but it was
Maria
literally
and I did it.
I was invested in it. I was like Disney all the way. And they've got the village outside where all the restaurants are Disney and
Yeah,
everything's Disney, and you just get so hyped up with it. It's so insane. And we stayed in a
Mickey
Disney.
Waffles and
We didn't stay in a Disney hotel. We stayed in a hotel that was close enough to Disney to feel part of it was a Disney hotel, and they
how many
totally.
days did you do that?
We did 3 days. So what we
Oh,
did,
wow.
we went from London, England. No, we went England, London. Then we went to Euro Disney with the family, with my ex-husband's family and some of the kids, all Australian ones. And then we did 3 days there, and then we went on and did an adventure through the rest of Europe, where we literally were like Amazing Race, didn't have anything booked.
Yes, yeah.
We're in Macca's trying to frantically try and book a hotel at the last minute, just me and my
Didn't you go to a
ex-husband.
hotel and they were like, no kids?
Yes, that was Dublin.
Yeah,
And then we had to come to Clonmel early, and then they gave us a free night. Um, but when we were in Euro Disney, anyway, so the kids, we had 2 days. We had 2 days at Disneyland and one day at Universal Studios, I think, and then or the Universal Park, whatever the other
yeah.
park is that's next door. So we did the 2 days, and then
I
the
find
third day,
Universal better than
it was
Disney.
it was very cool, yes, but we had decided that we would leave Link with the grandparents because they were with us,
Yes,
and we had no clean clothes because you're traveling, traveling, traveling. So we needed to find a laundromat, and the price for the hotel was ridiculously overpriced. So we were like, shit, we'll go and find a laundromat somewhere. And we had to get a couple of other things, like a bunch of stuff, and we just needed to do a few things. So we went to the local shopping center, and it was huge, but it was just like one of those fancy shopping centers that had all the brand names and stuff. And we went up to the concierge and we were like, hey, we need to get some laundry done. We need to go to a pharmacist. We need to do a couple of things. And they're like, it's cool. We'll get you a taxi. This is in France. And they'll take you to a laundromat and then take you for all the errands that you need. So this taxi picks us up and he takes us fucking 30 minutes away to this laundromat in the back end of France. Like, it was like crazy. It was like, it was like shop fronts that were burnt out. It was like full ghetto. And we get out of the cab because the dude's like, there was no like return trip. He was like, you got to get out, you can wait here and you get a cab. Like, I've got another job. He wasn't letting us stay, so he pretty
yeah.
much pushed us out of the cab. And
He wasn't waiting for your washing to get done.
I was with Jamie, and Jamie was completely freaking out. He's like, this is really unsafe, this is a really bad decision, this is how we die. And we're right in the front of this laundromat, right? So we go in, and we couldn't speak, like they didn't speak any English, and we're trying to sort of indicate, and he's pointing at the washing machines. He knew what we wanted because we had our laundry, and he's helping us and he's putting it all in. He was this little old man. Anyway, so they had like, we were expecting to pay really cheap prices because it was this laundromat in the middle of nowhere. So we had a small amount of money, a cash on us, and we were like, here's the money. Anyway, so he's coming up and he's pointing at the money, and Jamie was freaking out, like completely freaking out. He's like, this is the ghetto. We're really going to die here. And this old man's like doing this to me.
Yeah.
And I was like trying to talk to him and try to understand why I was doing it. But what he was trying to understand was he wanted to like see Australian money. Like he was trying to point at my
Ah,
money because he knew that we were Aussie, and he was trying to say to me he wanted to see what Aussie money looked like. And I
yeah.
finally sort of understood a bit because he was saying Aussie, he was saying Australian a few times and pointing at the money. And then he was smiling, even though he's aggressively pointing.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
had some money that was Australian in my purse, and I ended up getting it out. And then he just erupted. He was just like, oh, and he was like grabbing us and jumping up and down and like super excited because he'd seen Australian money because he probably had never seen it
Yeah, and
before.
because it's such cool money, Australian money, the plastic money and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. And meanwhile, Jamie's like completely hyperventilating. And I said to him, I said, see, sometimes you like, we've done enough true crime to realize that sometimes you can't think the best of people, but sometimes you have to think the best and not think that it's the worst situation. And once I showed him, and then he was like saying to me, I think I had $5. And in the end, I was like saying, do you want this $5? And he was like, like couldn't believe I would give it. And then he was trying to tell us all the places that we needed to see and
Oh,
trying to
geez.
speak as much English as he possibly could to get his point across because he wanted to tell us everything about like
Yeah,
France and stuff like that. And he was trying to tell us stories and things. And it was a really lovely moment. And I
that's
was
kind of
like,
cute. Yeah.
don't think the worst sometimes. Like when you travel, the natural inclination is to think the worst because you're in a
Yes.
situation you can't speak the language and you think that, you know, it's
Where
going
you
to
sort
end
of
badly.
fight or flight. Yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes you have to think positive and just think that,
They're not going to kill you.
yeah, they're not going to murder you. And we didn't get murdered.
Yes, thank God.
We made it back in one piece.
You made it to Magaluf.
Not sure how clean the washing was, to be really honest.
But it did a job. It made it feel a bit fresher.
Yes,
Uh,
but also when we're in Bali, I was terrible with the money. The whole $1 million thing
yeah, I
and the
know.
$1,000 thing is so bad. Like we shortchanged. We meant to give our driver when he picked us up from the airport and dropped us off. We wanted to give him like a $20 tip, which is what 200,000.
Yeah.
Um, because a friend had recommended him and she said they gave them and like they ended up paying $50 and it was really only like $25 I think from the hotel and stuff. And we gave him the extra money, and when Tyler went out to give it to him, I gave him the money and it was like 20,000, and then he ended up running back up and he's like, no, no.
Yeah,
It's like,
I'm
oh my God, I'm
sorry.
so sorry. And then when we gave him the tip, he was like, oh, no, 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 this is too much, too much. And we're like, no, no, you got us
Yeah.
here. You were very lovely. You stopped and got us vapes and told us a bit
Yeah.
about Bali and showed us some sights. This is a tip for you. And it was
Um,
very like
I
generous.
remember going and getting, I think, a facial of one of those, not the street stalls. It was in a shop, but on the street. And I think it was like 80,000 rupiah, so $8. And I just gave her, or maybe $18. I just gave her the 200,000 or whatever, or something where it ended up being like a $5 tip.
Mm,
She's like, oh no. And I was like, no, 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 you keep it. She's like, oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I was like, $5, man, for this
yeah.
fucking extra for this fucking cheap ass
Yeah.
facial.
We'd pay like 10 times that much in Australia.
Totally. Totally. So lessons I've learned with traveling, and this one took a while.
Be
Um,
organized.
oh well,
Preparation is key.
that's just me to um was, and it was after Iceland actually. So Kim and Sam, when they travel, they always come back with a shirt that's got where they've traveled on, they buy their things. I was very frugal. We'd be traveling over in Iceland, there'd be things, and Vinny would be like, just
To
buy it. I'm
me, you
like,
always bring me back multiple gifts. I brought you back one thing from Bali.
but even just for us, I'd be like, oh, I'm not spending $60 on that. I don't need it, rah, rah, rah. And now we've learned if we want it, just fucking buy it. You're
Yeah.
gonna love it. It's gonna be there forever. So a lesson learned is if you want it, buy it within reason, of course. Also, budget traveling. There's a bit of an ickatal involved. I understand some people don't have the capacity to do that, but if you save just a month longer, and you don't have to scrimp by doing it. When we did America the first time, it was literally on a budget. Everything was like counting dollars the whole time, and it kind of puts a bit of a sour taste on the trip as well. So now I like to try to save a little bit longer and try and not be so budget. Accommodation choices, research, research,
Mm.
research. the price may be right, but it
And
pays.
also, don't be hard on yourself when you make a bad choice, because you can't always be completely on the money. Like when we went to
Exactly.
Thailand, the first two hotels we stayed in were fucking insane. The last hotel was a shit heap. And I
Yes.
had researched it really heavily, and I was like, do you know what? It's 2 out of 3, man. Like,
Yeah, yeah, that's not bad. Yeah. But it pays. The price may be right when you find somewhere, but it pays to sometimes pay that little bit extra for a
yes.
location and a nicer room. If you
Mm.
can afford it, do it. You won't remember the extra $100 you spent on a room a year later, but you'll remember the shithole you stayed in.
Especially when the conversion's good for you as well. Like, especially if you're going to Bali, just pay what you'd pay in Australia sometimes. Do you know what I mean? Because it's going to be fucking Ritz as shit.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
paying
exactly.
Australian prices, man. You're
Exactly.
going to get the best of the best over
Yeah.
there.
So that's like with our last 3 nights in Bali in April, and we're staying at the Sofitel, and yeah, it's a lot more expensive than other places, but we're just like, it's
But
three
it'll be
nights.
fancy as fuck.
It'll be nice. Yeah. And then I've got as my last lesson learned, always want to live somewhere, but I don't know what that means.
Oh. Well, I have a few cultural things that I wanted
Oh,
to talk about.
I know what it means. So it was in reference to when I lived in London. I always, after living in London, I knew after that, I always want to live somewhere where I can walk to a pub, where I can walk to a shop, where I've got those
Which is where you live
amenities
now.
around.
Yeah.
And that's why, yeah, West
Yeah.
End was perfect.
Mm. See, that's not Tyler's thing. He likes somewhere a little bit more remote. He doesn't like a lot of, I like convenience too, and I like to
Yeah.
have a pub near me. But I guess in the Central Coast, we had that all around us too. And then now we live in Brisbane, and all the pubs are shit that are near us. So one thing I wanted to mention about culture
Yeah.
is that when I lived in England, I did pick up a bit of an English accent.
Yeah. Same.
And when I talked on the phone to my family, they'd be like, "Oh my god, you sound so fucking English."
And you do that.
It's
Hey, yeah.
hiya, hiya. I
Hiya.
love that. I still say it all the time. Hiya, hiya.
Yeah.
And I always type it too. Like it's always what I say to people. Hiya. Um, but and what's the other thing that they say? You're right. You're right.
You're
You're
right.
right.
Yeah.
You're right. And I remember every time I talked to my phone, like, oh my God, this sounds like English. It was totally pretentious. I just did it because I
Yeah.
was 20 and I was living overseas.
Just give me a
Um,
chance.
the thing for me about travel is the food too. I
Oh,
just
yes.
love, love, love eating in other countries. I love
Yeah.
experiencing different foods. I love just like, all the different variety that you can
Food
get.
is such a huge part. Even when you live away from your own home country, the thing you miss most is the food and then
Yes.
family.
Yes. And a really funny thing, so when we traveled through Europe, so we went to, hang on, let me just count. So my son has been to Thailand, he's been to New Zealand, and then he went through Europe with us. So in Europe, we actually did well, this isn't all Europe, but these are all the countries we did on our big trip to Europe. We did Singapore, he did Dubai, because he stayed in Dubai while we were in
Yes, that's right.
Oktoberfest. He did
Jamie.
England, Ireland, France, Amsterdam, and Italy, and that was
Mm.
in a whole trip that took 6 weeks. And he ate a cheeseburger in every country.
Hmm.
And his favorite cheeseburger, he reckoned, was the Ireland one. That was the McDonald's across the road from the
Ah,
hotel that
cool.
we
Yeah,
stayed
yeah, yeah.
in. But he says to me all the time, as I said to him, darling, you are the most well-traveled kid, I reckon. Like, I mean, I know there's people who've traveled way more, but come
Yes.
on, he's traveled to a lot of countries for
Especially at
his
his
age.
age by the time he came back from the European trips.
And
Yeah.
he always says to me, he's like, oh, it doesn't mean anything because I don't remember it. And I was like, of course you remember it, child. You weren't a fucking babe in arms. Must have some memories of some of the
Yeah.
places that you went to. Um, what else? Oh yeah, I talked about the amazing race where we went through Europe and
Yes.
booked
On a
places on the
whim.
fly. Yes. And also pub life in England is a way of life.
Yes, agreed. The
Yorkshire
fireplace.
puds,
The
going out for a
fireplace.
hot dinner at the pub with a pint,
Yeah.
drinking in pubs. There's no judgment
Yeah.
about drinking 5 pints on a Sunday
Just the
afternoon.
whole vibe of an English pub, the whole wooden
Yeah.
feel. It's the pub's at least 100 years old.
You can have breakfast for dinner if you want to.
Yeah. Bangers and
Everything's
mash.
served with beans if you
I
want
was going to
it.
say, even in the KFC, you don't
Even
get
in
mashed
I was just
potato.
about to
It's
say that the
baked beans.
McDonald's and the KFC have baked beans on the menu.
Yeah.
It's
Uh,
definitely a vibe, and I agree. Like, I would love in my future to live in another country again. I've only lived in a
yeah.
different country one time. I would love, love, love to do it again. I hope that it's in my future. I don't know that it will be, but certainly
Well, it can
traveling
be.
to
Yeah.
more countries. Yes, I hope so.
Yeah, me too.
My husband's a little bit more reluctant. If I really push the point, we could do it, but it just depends on so much timing. Do you know what I mean? Like
That's
jobs
the
and
thing.
money,
Yes.
and
That's the thing. Like,
there's so
we've
many
still got plans
things.
to eventually move to London again, but at this stage, it'll probably be when I'm 50 or just over 50, you know?
Mm.
But it doesn't mean it's off the cards.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean because you're over 50 that you can't do it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Just got to win that lotto.
I know. I hope that it's on the cards for me. I work for an international company, so I hope that one day I
There's a
always
lot of
tell
big. Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Love to go to the States. Love to live
Yeah.
in the States for a bit. Love to live in Canada for a little bit. Love to live in London for a little
Yeah.
bit.
I'd love to go back to
I'm not
London.
picky. Just tell me which place you want me to go.
I'll go.
I
I'm there.
go.
Oh God, that's just given me the travel bug again. That whole story, that whole episode.
I know. Well, you're going to Bali in a couple of months, so fuck
I
you.
know. And then hopefully Europe at the end of the year.
Mm. Anywho,
Any whom?
that's our episode.
That's our episode. Our
It was a
first.
little bit rambly, I feel, and I feel like you're going to have a bit of a tough time editing this one because we had there was a lot of stories.
There was, but I think, some of them were pretty good. Let's see how it goes.
Yes, yes. And we encourage you listeners to tell us about all your fabulous travel stories because,
Yes. What
I think
cultures
that,
have you picked up? What cultures have you picked up? Is that right?
yeah, totally. But I
What
think
lessons have you learned?
there's this whole thing where like people don't want to talk about their travel stories or feel like, if they talk about them, no one wants to hear about constantly talking about travel stories. But I think that's bullshit. I
Yeah.
love talking to people about where they've been and all the experiences that they had. I'm like, tell me more. You're
And you
making
get to
me jealous, but tell me more.
relive your own adventures that you had.
Mm-hmm. Give me a Yorkshire pud right now, and I would
Stat.
just stuff it into my mouth.
Full of fill that Yorkshire pud with some mashed potato and a slice of roast beef.
Definitely some gravy.
Yeah.
And a pint.
Oh yeah, totally gravy. And a pint. Oh God, I want to be in London so bad.
I know.
Not long.
Imagine how much you drink if you lived there, though.
As opposed to. But anyway, tune in next week for True Crime.
Mm-hmm.
Our True Crime episode is any true crime that we want.
Any true crime, anywhere in the world. Give us some suggestions because it's hard sometimes to pick some really
I'll tell
shocking,
you what,
interesting
I had a lot of
ones.
trouble with the Australian one this week. I need to be a bit more prepared.
Took me a little while to find mine, but I tell you what, that forensic investigators get onto that. There's about 6 seasons of it.
Oh, and is it Australian?
It's on 9. It's like, so you got to get through the ads too.
Yeah,
which is tough. But I didn't have any other options. I couldn't find anything because I find it's much better if I watch the episode.
Yes.
And then I pick up all the information. I know the story end to end. Then I can just free write it as opposed to having to research.
That's exactly what I had to do for that one that we just did.
Yeah.
I had to watch the episode twice and then do it. And I did that last time with the Silent Night, Lethal Night, the Christmas one. And it was much easier to actually do it when I watch the episode, take the notes, flesh it out.
Yeah.
But anywho, we digress. Good night, you stupid bitches.
Good night. Share, subscribe, tell your mates.
To your nth
comments,
degree.
interact, engage with us. Tell us what you like, what you don't like.
Yeah, it's a two-way street, guys. Good night, stupid bitches.
Good night.
Yeah, that stupid bitch. He's a stupid bitch. What a stupid bitch. That stupid bitch.